Hey GearFacts friends, I've got a peculiar keyboard to demonstrate to you today. It's the Edirol PC-80, a MIDI controller with built-in speakers. So why would somebody want speakers on a MIDI controller? It seems like an unusual kind of an innovation. Is it genius or is it just silly? Well, let's set it up with some other instruments and have a think about it along the way. If you use a PC-80, your setup's going to end up looking something like this. You've got a sound module that doesn't have speakers of its own. That's why we're utilizing the speakers on the PC-80. You might have an expression pedal plugged into the expression pedal input and a sustain pedal plugged in there and a whole lot of cables. You'll need MIDI, you'll need audio in to go into those speakers, the cables to the pedals, and of course power to both units. So that's a fair bit to consider. But now that everything's plugged in, we've got a perfectly usable MIDI system. Notice that in this particular case, the sustain pedal has the wrong polarity for the PC-80. So if you're buying a sustain pedal for it, be sure to check that it's got the right polarity. But for the sake of demonstration, it does work fine, just that would normally be in reverse. You get what I mean. As for the expression pedal, this will give you an extra layer of modulation on top of what's provided by the modulation stick right here. Although with this particular module you don't get much response with the foot pedal. So even though I wasn't able to show you any amazing performance capabilities there, this example does demonstrate how compact your overall setup can be. We've got MIDI integration, all the expression that you're likely to need, a set of speakers, and we can take advantage of all of the software that's inside the sequencer or other module that you might be using. Just cruising across the front panel now, it's a fairly typical Roland setup. This particular one is branded as Edirol, but really it's Roland, as evidenced by the style of the switches and of course the classic Roland pitch bend and modulation, which is a brilliant design that I hope they never change. There's the grill of the left speaker, display in the center, controller for master volume, and the value for whatever parameter that you're controlling at the time. You can access the parameters along this row here by holding down the two keys together. You'll see that we're in utility mode now, so you choose a utility accordingly and make your adjustments. There's not that much else to see on the front panel. There's a handy diagram here with the velocity curve options. I must say the keys do have a very nice feel. It's the kind of action you'd expect to find at Roland's higher end. That there's no actual flat velocity setting, and that's something that I personally like to use. It might not matter to other users. And it certainly tends to matter less when you try hooking up units like this one. A Korg Electribe. Let's see what fun we can have with this one. Very seamless program changes. Numbers adjust simultaneously on both units. As with many MIDI setups, you might have to adjust some parameter functions in either of the units so that they can talk to each other fully. For instance, this Electribe won't hear the modulation control, but it will do pitch bend. So sadly we'd have to go to the manual of the Electribe and find out how it's going to receive the modulation signal. Let's try the modulation pedal. Yep, same thing. The PC-80 is sending it, but the Electribe isn't receiving it. It can all be set up to do exactly what you want to do. It's just one of the hazards of working with MIDI. The advantage of MIDI, of course, being that we can control pretty much anything without the need for a computer. Even an old keyboard from the 80s. So what about the performance of the speakers? Really it's all about the speakers with the PC-90 because there are lots of MIDI keyboards that can perform all of the other functions that it's offering. So how good or bad do they sound? Well, the answer is average. They're pretty small speakers, so we can't expect miracles, but I would describe the quality as acceptable. The biggest problem I found was balancing master volume with the volume of the slave device and the line input level, which is controlled by this knob right here, inconveniently underneath an overhang right at the back. You've got to get the balance right between that output signal from the slave and the output from your speakers. If it's not quite right, some noise might creep through, but you will find a balance. It just takes a little bit of experimenting. While we're looking at the back, I'll take you through the rest of the sockets. We've got the two inputs there for our different kind of foot pedals. MIDI out socket. Here's our USB and our PC control switch here. The switch is basically a selector between mains power and USB power. And a quick note about the USB connection. If your laptop has terrible speakers or they're just not loud enough, you will get quite a big boost from the PC-80. There's the power supply input on the right, and over here it's quite interesting. We've got left and right out with RCA and also a subwoofer socket. So as well as having those onboard speakers, you can plug out a significantly more advanced audio system. Over here we've got two headphone out sockets, which is usually a student-teacher sort of arrangement. I wouldn't normally expect to see a function like that on a MIDI controller, but it's good to have. Then there's that line level input power control I was talking about a moment ago, and the TRS inputs for your left and right signal. So a MIDI controller with speakers is a bit of an unusual thing, and I'm sure there are many people out there who would completely write the idea off as totally stupid. So I posed the question at the beginning of this video, who would want a MIDI controller with built-in speakers? Well, I guess the obvious answer is somebody who needs absolute maximum portability and absolute minimum weight. It's not heavy. Bear in mind that if you took it to band practice though, these speakers, although they're reasonably nice, they're not going to be loud enough to cut it against the noise of the drums, the guitarist amp, the booming bass, and so on. Not loud enough. Then of course you've got home studio use, so for somebody who literally can't fit monitor speakers into their tiny little space, or you just can't afford monitor speakers, and I totally respect that, this might be a good solution. But I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts though, so please tell other people about Gear Facts, please like, comment or subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.